How are you storing your logging information, as well as how much detail can you get into? We'll find out next right here on IT Pro TV.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hello, we are configuring and verifying Syslog and NetFlow, and here, of course, to guide us through that, Anthony Segura. Anthony, as we get started here and we start talking about it, sometimes it's easy to go through these things for certification, like on the CCNA, and go, okay, I know how to configure it, but they may not have the context on why they need to set up something like this. So I understand like Syslog, but why would it even go to the point of NetFlow?
Yeah, it's really interesting. The devices are doing a great job automatically telling us health information. That's the system logging that's built in. But we want to take a deeper look than we do at the CCNA level at that. And then, Ronnie, like you mentioned, there's a lot of CCNA level folks that may have really not wrapped their head around NetFlow and what it can give us. So let's do both of those. Let's jump to the command line. Let's start out with system logging. One of the things I encourage you to do is make sure you understand that you want to see exactly what is set up on your system, and that is going to be the show logging command. So console logging is essentially something that it's really interesting. If you go to a Cisco device and you try and silence all logging, it's not possible. That is impossible to do. So console logging is something that is very commonplace, and it can drive you a little bonkers, right? You come in and you go to your loopback interface and you shut it down. And of course, we know that we're going to see confirmation of that with those log messages right there. So one of the things we do, of course, is we go into the console and we do logging synchronous. So at least it brings us to a new line when those messages hit, and it doesn't break up our commands onto the multiple lines. But now that we've just seen an example of a couple of system messages that were shot out to the console, let's spend a moment looking at what's in here. So Ronnie, it looks like to me, we can time and date stamp these things.
Right.
That's great. We get an indication of what facility, what kind of internal component is telling us this message. And then that number right there is pretty important.
Severity level?
Yeah, that's our severity level. Now, I must admit, I did not memorize the severity level numbers along with their names. If I wanted to get like a perfect score in the CCNA, I would do that, but I don't care about a perfect score. So I didn't memorize those names. What I would always do is if you can do it this way, you can go logging, and I'll explain this command in a moment, but logging buffer, and I think I need to be out of interface configuration mode to get the context-sensitive help I was looking for. Logging, buffer, and then you do a question mark. There's your cheat in your iOS. So notice the level 5 that we were just looking at is severity level 5, and that is a notification. That is its common name inside the iOS. So I've actually used this before inside of exams to help me. Right. So, if it's like, what's severity level 3? Well, I don't know. I don't have it memorized. So I'll run this command and I'll learn that that is for errors.
Yeah, but the neat thing about it is hierarchical, right? So it goes us from 1 to 7. 7 is kind of, I think it's debugging. And then it all goes down to 1, which is like danger, this thing is about to crash, right?
Yeah, it goes down to 0.
0, sorry.
Yeah,
0.
So when you get down to 0, again, I don't have the names memorized, but I'll just look it up and tell you, Ronnie, that's what's called an emergency. Yeah, 911 time, that's what the router's saying there. What's hysterical in my demo here is we got all this stuff crashing. And it's all level 5s. And that's, again, level 5 stands for notifications, normal but significant conditions. And I would say, I'm surprised it's not lower than that. right? I am crashing BGP. And the router's like, hey man, BGP just crashed. It's normal. It's normal. No, it's not normal. So it's interesting that didn't get a higher degree of severity.
Oh, you do see a 3 up there.
Yeah, what was the
notification.
3?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh, I love it.
Yep.
So that's interesting. So what really initiated the problem with BGP, which ended up being the hold time expiration, that was a level 3. And that is an error. Yeah, look at that. So that I do love that they did flag something is really pretty bad there. So aren't these great? I mean, system logging is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Now, by the way, you may be wondering what the heck happened here. Well, I'm going to fix it right now before I forget. I'm going to go into the Loopback 0 interface and I'm going to no shut it. When I shut down that loopback, I crashed BGP, which was relying on that loopback for its reachability. So let's get back into the show log settings, or show logging to be complete, and notice what this command is telling us. It's telling us that system logging is enabled. Yeah, we know that. Like I said, trust me, you can try and turn off the device's ability to do syslog and you won't succeed. Built into the Cisco device is that burning desire to log information, to be able to report an emergency condition. What you can manipulate, though, is things like monitored logging. This, remember, dictates whether or not you can have the system message information show up on remote consoled-in machines. So someone comes into this machine with SSH, you want them to be able to see these syslog messages, you would enable monitored logging. This we love, and it's on this model of router. It was turned on by default. Buffered logging was turned on by default, and that is so great. So you can come up here after the fact, do your show logging, and you can see all of the syslog information that you may have missed while you were away. If you want to clear that, it's just clear logging. So I just cleared out that log. Let me try it again. Show log. It should be empty now, and it is.
Right. So when we start looking at this idea between those 3 differences, console, monitor, buffered is in the RAM, right?
That's right. So it is consuming a little bit of memory on the device, and you can control the size, Ronnie. And you can also do this. I would highly recommend this. You could go logging, buffered, and then go ahead and set your level. So I would say like 6. And they do let you, they let you do the number or the name. So I'll just do logging buffered 6. Now, what I've just done is I have gotten rid of the debugging messaging from going to the buffer, exactly what I would most likely want to do, Ronnie, because remember, when we're debugging, we are usually sitting right there, actively looking at those messages on the console.
Okay.
You know, so it doesn't really make sense to tuck those in the buffer.
Yeah. So the default size here on that buffer, though, I think was like 8 megabytes.
Yep.
And we can actually barely see it up there on the logging buffer size itself. We can increase that if we need.
You could, yes.
But it also means that we're taking away resources at the same time.
That's right.
So, right.
That's right. But typically we have a lot of resources available for this these days. So, you know, bump that buffer up if it's something that you're using. Remember, it's going to be an overwrite situation. When that thing fills, the oldest events start purging out of that as new events are written in.
So I think that's a good point for us to make at this point. So let's say it gets close to that and we're starting to run out of that very quickly. Should we go ahead and still just try to increase the buffer size, or should we send these syslogs to somewhere else?
Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The way we do this in production networks, the buffer's nice, but it's not really what we do. What we do, I mean, we do take advantage of the buffer, but it's for more of that like quick, like, oh, what just happened? Let's check in the buffer. But where the elegant solution comes in here is we're going to go in, Ronnie, and we're going to say logging host. And notice we are going to set a DNS name or IP address, but typically we're using a DNS name here. And we're having all of our devices, all of our Cisco devices, ship off their logs to a central repository where we have some good sophisticated software that can do filtering, that can do alarms. So if an emergency or one of those other high severity levels, 0, 1, 2, or 3, right? 0 through 3 are pretty major stuff. If one of those hits, it gets, of course, shipped off to the central repository, and then we could have an event trigger at the reception of that, and maybe someone gets a page. What did I just go back to the 90s? Someone gets an email, right? Or someone gets a text message. Yes, that would be the modern vehicle. And now they're like, oh, there's an emergency. So another thing that will happen is there can be like a historical trend of information that's gathered up from those logs. So logging host is the key command here.
So along with this, though, it then ties into something else I believe that either we will cover or we have covered at this point, is the idea of the time synchronization that we did, because without that,
that's
the
right.
logs that we keep may not be useful.
You told me just yesterday that, boy, Anthony, make sure, or 2 days ago, make sure your time is accurate, Anthony. And one of the reasons you want to do that, Ronnie stated, was to make sure the logging data that you're getting is accurately timestamped. And you're absolutely right. And don't forget one more thing. I know you want to move to NetFlow, right. And I do too. No, I do too.
Yeah, that's fine.
I do. But before we move to NetFlow, one more thing about this. Remember that in a lot of these tools, you can control what goes into system messaging. I'll do a quick example for you. Watch this. Ronnie, have you ever seen anyone do this? I'll do a real simple example. Have you ever seen anyone do access list 1 permit host 10, 10, 10, 100, and then they do this. Access list 1 deny any log. You ever seen that type of an access list?
I have.
Yeah.
Right.
What are we doing here? Well, we are saying that anyone that violates our access list, we want an entry written to the log. Normally, we wouldn't see that. We wouldn't see log messages created based on an access list. And we wouldn't see the denies anyways because they're implicitly denied. Right. So here we're doing an explicit deny with the log keyword so that if someone violates the policy we gave them in writing, we get to see it right in the log. So please remember that you can have some control over what ends up in those system logs.
All right, so since the title of our episode here is Syslog and NetFlow, why do we put these together, and what does NetFlow give to us as a benefit for?
I wanted to put these together because they're both ways to get information off of your system from a reporting standpoint. And NetFlow, it's a built-in network analyzer, one of many built into Cisco equipment, but this one is a super simple one. I've got one running here. Watch this. If I do a show run interface gigabit 0/0, Ronnie, you can see that I've got this set up. IP flow ingress, IP flow egress. What I'm doing here is I am capturing the IP flow information in and out of that interface, and we can ship it off. We can export it to what's called a NetFlow collector. Same kind of paradigm as Syslog. We can have specialized software there, Ronnie, that is going to analyze that data. Now you could get information like, who's my top talkers? Of all the devices that are communicating through this interface, who are the chattiest? And, typically it's your gamers. So let's do a show run so we can see some of the additional configuration there. So what I did was, sure, I did those commands under the interface, but there was some global configuration commands that we did to set up the feature we're talking about called NetFlow. So once again, under the interface, You saw it a moment ago. It's simply IP flow egress, IP flow ingress, because I wanted both directions to be captured. And then if we look down in the global configuration mode, you can see that I did an IP flow export, set the NetFlow version that we're working with. You have a couple options. We went for the latest version 9. And then notice what we do. We take that NetFlow information and we export it to a machine that's out there to collect that information, to store it for us. This is so much like the system logging that we just discussed. And if you're wondering what in the world is the 4 nines all about, that is the custom UDP port that we have configured locally here and on the remote server so that we can do the transmission to that custom UDP port. So we choose a custom UDP port for the sending of the NetFlow data, and our server's configured with port 9999. It's UDP, by the way, in order to receive that data.
So that number can change as long as it's the same on both ends.
That's right. You can pick any custom UDP number that you have available to you. No problem at all. And that's kind of a built-in little security feature there too, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, Ronnie, that was classic NetFlow.
Right.
We now have something that is exciting, that is a new and improved flexible NetFlow. And I sounded just like Zach there for a minute here at IT Pro TV. I was channeling Zach. So check this out. By the way, this is the classic. I know I showed that rather quickly, so I wanted to just kind of review this with you. Remember the classic config. I do IP flow-export, set our version number. I then indicate where we're sending that NetFlow information, and then we go under the interface and we either capture inbound or outbound or both with the simple IP flow commands. You know what I love about this command? Go with the flow, man.
Right.
Just go with the flow, Ronnie. Now,
that's good.
this is the one that Ronnie was excited for because Ronnie had heard that you could be much more precise with like the information you gather. And that's exactly what flexible NetFlow gives us. Notice we create a flow record here and we're saying, I want to match on IPv4 destination address so you can limit right away what information you're gathering. And then look at that, Ronnie. You can collect the byte information, the packet information. I could have gone on and on with a list of specifically what I wanted to collect. Finally, we can be this flexible. Now, this is a long config because the next thing you do is you create the exporter, which is just like before, saying where this stuff is going to be sent to, okay? And then you create a monitor which takes that custom record we created and ties it into this equation. And then you you tie the monitor into the exporter that has the definition of where your stuff is going. And then you go under the interface and you assign it. So we will put these steps for you in a downloadable, text file. So you have these steps because that's the one issue with the flexible NetFlow is that it is a verbose, multi-step process.
Now, with this flexible one, is there a special graphical user interface that we can use to help see the data? Or are there certain verification commands that we need to think about?
Yeah, no, what you're going to find is that almost any software package I've ever seen for presenting the NetFlow is not going to care flexible versus, you know what I mean? Just through the natural software updates of the management software, it's going to accept the flexible NetFlow data just fine.
So are there any commands, show commands that we need to actually take a look at?
That's a great point. Yep, that's a great point. And the great news is they don't vary based on what version that you're using, really. The commands are kind of the commands. And one of the ones that we use a lot is show IP flow. Let's see, I thought that, show IP flow why I was thinking about that command is the top talkers.
Right.
You can enable the top talkers tracking, and that's how you would see that data. So that's a cool one. But the one I wanted to start with is actually show flow. And then you can do, like, remember how we were setting up an exporter? You can do the show flow exporter. But the tricky thing about this is, notice the commands vary between show flow and show IP flow. So that's one of the tricky parts of this, Ronnie. But you and I were reviewing together before this episode some of the key commands.
Show IP cache flow.
Show IP cache flow. That's the one I was looking for. Thank you. And look at that. Remember when we showed that we were capturing classic NetFlow information on this router? Well, now Ronnie and I just absolutely confirm that we did. And look at this. We can even see the traffic that we're running. We get a little instant traffic analysis here, Ronnie, and it makes sense what we see, right? You and I have taught BGP on this machine. We see most of the flows dealing with that. We taught NTP on this machine. We can see that traffic. And then IP other, remember what that is, Ronnie? OSPF.
OSPF, okay.
Yeah, so we can immediately do some crude network analysis just looking at this. There was another command, Ronnie, that was, none of the commands have NetFlow in the name. That's what's so funny about it. I think it's show flow. Yeah, show flow interface.
There's also a show IP flow interface.
Show IP flow interface. Yeah, so you'll just have to kind of practice with this. There we go, to confirm where you've set up the NetFlow feature in what location. So that was show IP flow interface. What you'll be doing, just like I was just doing, is you kind of experiment with your show commands here. It's no wonder I don't have these memorized. You won't either. These aren't commands you're using every day. You're only using these when you use NetFlow, and you're not using NetFlow all the time. This isn't like show IP OSPF neighbor. You're using that all the time.
Right.
So.
All right, Anthony. Well, thank you again for helping us to understand a little bit more about the use of syslogs as well as NetFlow here. We saw the configuration as well as a verification of that, and we talked about severity levels and even the idea of the buffer. You name it, there's a lot of information that you need to make sure that you are familiar with here. But there is more to come, so we're going to go ahead and sign off. For IT Pro TV, I'm your host, Ronnie Wong.
And I'm Anthony Sequeira, Severity Level 7.
Stay tuned for more of your CCNP Encore show.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.